I'm no fan of the brothers McCourt. After the first book, Angela's Ashes, which I thought was dead brilliant, I've been disappointed by anything either Frank or Malachi McCourt have written. But in that first book, Angela's Ashes, there's this wonderful scene where the landlord is coming to collect the rent. And this portrays the time of the 1950s when in the city of Limerick, where they lived, the poverty was tremendous. And the conditions under which this particular family lived were among the most harsh. And there was Angela and her 3 sons and the grandmother. And they were in this, what was supposed to be a 2-room apartment. But that was the problem, that things had changed. That one evening, sitting there, too poor to even afford wood for the fire, too poor to have anything that they needed even for supper except for tea, sitting there huddled against that damp Irish cold, the youngest child, Malachi, pulled a piece of molding off the wall. And the mother said, well, as long as it's off, we might as well have a fire with it and heat the tea. So they did. And the next morning, when it was time for breakfast, off came another piece, until 2 weeks later, the wall was gone. And it was at that point that the landlord shows up to collect the rent. And Malachi says that, and so it went for 2 weeks until the rent man came. And entering the apartment, he said, "Good God, where's the other room?" "What room?" said Angela. "What room?" echoed her sons. "What room indeed?" said Grandma. "I distinctly remember 2 rooms," said the rent man. "I rented you 2 rooms, and now one is gone. Where's that room?" "What room?" said Angela. "What room?" said her mother. "What room?" said the boys again. "I rented you 2 rooms, and there was a wall," said the rent man. "What happened to the wall?" "What wall?" said Angela. "What wall?" echoed her mother. "There was a wall," said the rent man. "I distinctly remember a wall, because I distinctly remember a room," said the rent man. "Now where is that wall? And where is that room?" Grandma says, "I don't remember a wall. If I don't remember a wall, how could I remember a room?" Angela turns to her sons. "Do any of you remember a wall?" And Michael pulls at her hand and says, "Is that the wall we burned in the fire?" Today is a day in which our landlady shows up and coming to inspect the property that we have here. Therese is the lady of this house. In most Carmelite houses, Mary is the lady of the place, but not this place. It's under the patronage of the mother. It's under the patronage of Saint Therese. This house stands beneath her patronage. And the question is, will she recognize it? Would she know the house if she comes to it? The house she gave us almost 90 years ago has changed tremendously since the first Carmelites came to this place. At that time, we had a whole farm that went all the way to Eastern Avenue and over to Michigan and Queens Chapel. And they lived in that annex that was built probably about 150 years ago, crowded into about 10 rooms. Would she recognize us today? And that's it. Not so much would she recognize the property, but would she recognize us? The building has changed. We built in 1939 the big priory. In 1990, added on this wing with this new chapel and the refectory. We've sold off lands around. We've gotten landscapers in to make the area beautiful. Therese would appreciate that. She had an eye for beauty. She was an artist. She'd appreciate the way the building is decorated. She'd appreciate the architecture of what's been added here. She would appreciate many of the beautiful things we have. But would she recognize us? Would she recognize us as her brothers? Would she recognize us as the people to whom she entrusted this house? I ask your indulgence because it probably is going to take a moment or two to do this, but I want to trace an idea that is very central in our Carmelite identity, that reaches its full flowering with Therese. It begins an idea in the Rule. It's in Albert's chapter on spiritual warfare, where Albert tells us to put on holiness as your breastplate, and it will enable you to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. To love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, and your whole strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. This simple idea is taken up almost 2 centuries after Albert by Philippe Ribaud with the Institute of the First Monks. And he says, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, depart from here, and go toward the east, and hide yourself in the Wadi of Kerith, which is over and against the Jordan. And there you will drink of the torrent, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. In this passage from the first book of Kings, Philippe Ribaud says that to depart from here, turn away from the world, go toward the east, convert, turn your life to God, and hide yourself in the Wadi Kerith, in the Latin in caritate, upon the in caritate, to hide yourself in love, to hide yourself in charity. Because it is, as Philippe Ribaud tells us, that hiding ourselves in charity, we hide ourselves in God. We hide ourselves in the very life of God. That this intimate relationship we have with God in love is, for Ribaud, the very heart of our vocation as Carmelites. Therese of Lisieux will pick it up in my favorite passage in Teresa, in the Soliloquies, where she says, "O my Jesus, how great is the love you bear the children of men! For the greatest service one can render you is to leave you for their sake and their benefit, and then you are possessed more completely. Whoever fails to love his neighbor fails to love you, my Lord, since we see you showed such very great love that you have for the children of Adam by shedding so much blood." And Teresa reminds us here that the love of God must bear fruit in the love of neighbor. That authentic love of God, of leaving God in prayer even, to go to our neighbor in his need, is the greater love. That the love of God impels us to the love of neighbor. And I think St. John of the Cross refines this in his ascent of Mount Carmel, where he says, "O guiding night, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that has united the lover with his beloved, transforming the beloved in her lover." That this love of God, this love we have for God, and more important, the love that God has for us, transforms us into God, transforms us into that very love, which is God's divine nature. We become, John tells us, partakers in the divine nature. We are transformed ourselves into that love, which is God. God is love. We heard that in the second reading today. God is love. And whoever lives in God lives in love. And God lives in him. That this vocation that we realize in Carmel, to be caught, to be transformed into love, so that we love not simply, not merely with the natural human love, affection that we feel, pleasant as that is, good as that is, but that we can learn to love, we can come to love with the very love with which God loves. This transformation, this partaking of the divine nature, this divinization, is the very heart of our vocation. But Therese takes it even a step further in that wonderful passage in her autobiography, where she says, "Without becoming discouraged, I continued my reading, and this sentence consoled me. Yet strive after the better gifts, and I point out to you a yet more excellent way." And the apostle explains how all the most perfect gifts are nothing without love. That charity is the excellent way that leads most surely to God. I finally had rest, considering the mystical body of the church. I had not recognized myself in any of the members described by St. Paul, or rather, I desired to see myself in all of them. Charity gave me the key to my vocation. I understood that if the church had a body composed of different members, the most necessary and the most noble of all could not be lacking to it. And so I understood that the church had a heart, and this heart was burning with love. I understood that it was love alone that made the church's members act. And if love ever became extinct, apostles would not preach the gospel, and martyrs would not shed their blood. I understood that love comprised all vocations, that love was everything, that it embraces all times and all places, in a word, that it is eternal. Then, in the excess of my delirious joy, I cried out, "O Jesus, my love, my vocation, at last I have found it. My vocation is love. Yes, I have found my place in the church, and it is you, O my God, who have given me this place. In the heart of the church, my mother, I shall be love. Then I shall be everything, and thus my dream will be realized." I think when we talk about our charism as Carmelites, and what is the essence of our vocation as Carmelites, we are used to saying that it's contemplative prayer. And I don't think it is. Prayer is the means to the goal, the means to the end. But the goal is to become love, the love that fills the heart of God, the love that fills the heart of Christ's risen body, the church, to become this divine love, to be transformed by God's love for us into his love for all creation. That is our vocation. And so when Therese shows up to see us, to look and to see these 70-some years later after we've come to Washington, these are more than that, these 80-some years now since we've come to Washington. When she comes and she sees our beautiful refectory, our lovely chapel, our Carmelite library, that's not what she's going to be looking for. What she will look for is to recognize us as her brothers. To recognize us as her brothers. And the only way that that will show is that we, like her, are participating in this journey of transformation into love. Maybe we're only beginners in taking our first steps. That's not the important thing, how far along the journey we are, because the journey is an eternal journey. We will never fully be there. Through all eternity, we will progress further and further into the mystery of the infinite love of God as we become ourselves love, as we ourselves are transformed by God's love. The important thing is that we are on the journey, that we come to see the world through the eyes of a God who so loved the world that he sent his only Son, that whoever believes in him may not perish but may have eternal life. That we see the world with the love of God, and that we learn to love the world and all within it, especially our brothers and sisters, to love all with that same love that fills the heart of Christ.